Doing the work frees you from work. Let me say it one more time. Doing the work frees you from work. And on a spiritual level, knowing the law creates freedom. Knowing the law creates freedom. Let me say that one more time. Knowing the law creates freedom. So as I shared all of these examples, I share them for one purpose. I share them for one purpose, for us to understand the harmony of the law and the gospel. I get in this book, but I don't get in this book to be litigious. I don't, and here's the crazy part. I've been in Baptist churches where people go, I've even been in Pentecostal churches as well, where people go and say, oh, well, we're no longer underneath the law. We're under grace. But then they'll go and find something in the New Testament, and then they'll legalistically quote the New Testament as if it's law. And they'll say, oh, but see, in this verse, in code section 44.22, you ain't supposed to do this. Well, okay, if you're going to do that, if you're going to quote the Bible like that, you might as well be back underneath the law. That's not the purpose. The whole purpose that I study the word is for me to get inside the word entirely. And there's a verse that I want y'all to get to. If you don't get any other verse, because here's the thing that blows my mind, especially within the Baptist community. There's people who go their whole life and never hear from God. There's people, a Christian going their whole life and never hearing from God is like a rapper who can't freestyle. Because the whole point, is not for you to litigiously go and read this scripture and read that scripture and read this scripture. We're supposed to be reading the whole book, and we're reading the whole book so that we can understand. Lord, what you telling me, man? Lord, what do you want me to do? Lord, what's your will for my life? You're studying the word so that you can freestyle. Amen. And you're not freestyle. Here's the beautiful, just like a rapper is not really freestyling. He has chunks of memory, chunks of things in his head that he's just bringing forth. And none of us should be going and that's what's sad today is there's a lot of people who call themselves being spirit led and they just making up stuff. But if you've done the work, you can be led by the Spirit. You can be led by the Spirit. But let me just read this for you. Romans chapter 8, verse 14. You don't get anything else that we said tonight. For as many as are led by the Spirit of God, they are the sons of God. For as many as are led by the Spirit of God, they are the sons. As a matter of fact, if you don't memorize any other verse, you should try to memorize Romans 8:14. Romans 8:14. Because that's the whole purpose of what we do, or why we do what we do. We're supposed to get in the Word so that we can hear what God has for us. And so I hope really that this message kind of blessed you two different ways. One, I hope you look at your life and you look and you evaluate what's not working. Because things aren't working when you don't have a system. And let me tie that back in to why you need to know the law in order to be led by the Spirit. We're being led by the Spirit, but it's the Spirit of Jesus. Okay? We're being led by the Spirit of Jesus. And guess what Jesus did when he walked the earth? He kept the law. He kept the law. Now, I'm going to say something that's going to be a little controversial. But no Christian should be talking about, quote unquote, the spirit of Christmas. Especially if they don't know the holy days or they're not familiar with the holy days that Jesus followed when he walked the earth. Okay? And are we underneath the law? Absolutely not. We're not underneath the law. But you know what? Okay. if you want to study the early, like if I became famous one day and someone wanted to study my early life, you cannot tell the Tony story without telling people about Tony and his mama putting up the Christmas tree. You see what I'm saying? Because the Christmas tree and the American understanding of Christmas is what I grew up with. Okay? It's part of who I was. It's part of who I am. Okay? You can't tell my story without talking about the American Christmas tradition. Well, here's the thing. Jesus had 3.5, 4, depending how you count, 5 holy days that he followed much more diligently than we follow Christmas. So if you want to be led by the Spirit, and all of those holy days are in the law. So here's my challenge to you. How can you say you know Jesus when you don't know the holy days that he followed and he grew up with, that he followed every year? You know, how can you say you know him when you don't know those holy days? So I'm just sharing that that's part of knowing Jesus, is knowing what he's about, knowing his law. Okay? And when you know his law, a man who followed that law, he followed the law perfectly. So I don't study the law, the Old Testament law, to study the law and follow the law. I study the law because the spirit of the man who is my master followed the law perfectly. When I wanted to learn about Dr. King, you know what? I've been down to Atlanta. I've been outside of Dr. King's house. I've been all over, I've walked the steps. I went to Ebenezer Baptist Church where Dr. King was. I wanted to know about Dr. King, so I've walked where he's walked. Well, it's the same thing that's true with Jesus. Jesus followed the law. So if we want to be spirit-led, we're following the spirit of Jesus, we should know what was important to Jesus. We should know how Jesus walked. We should know how Jesus talked. We should know what was of value to him. So I'm sharing that with you because a lot of times we Christians miss the mark because we're trying to follow the Spirit without even knowing the rules to the system. Amen. Because, there's even some of you under the sound of my voice that you ain't got no problem following rules. You got a million rules. But sometimes the little rules can kind of make you miss the bigger point or the bigger picture. And we got to step back and realize that those rules and those systems are helpful. And they bring you peace and they bring you blessings. But at the same time, you got to follow the spirit of why you have those rules from the beginning, from the get-go. Amen. You got to follow the spirit of why you have those rules from the get-go and respecting the law. Let me give you one last analogy. In a year and a half, 2 years, Kim's already started doing it. But we're going to give Courtney chores around the house. And she's going to get a little baby allowance. Okay? And you can't expect Courtney to understand a work ethic when she gets older if she's never had chores as a child. Because chores as a child begins to establish a work ethic so that when you get older, you know that you've got responsibilities. You know that you got to do something. It gives you that structure. That's what the law does for us. So you can't understand the Spirit unless you understand the law. You can't understand the Spirit unless you understand the law. Because we're spirit-led of a man who followed the law. Everything in life has a system. Everything in life has rules. You should set rules for everything in your life. Every one of your friends, they need boundaries. Every one of your friends needs boundaries. Every one of your, let me say it one more time. Every last one of your friends need boundaries. Because if they don't have boundaries, they're going to make you feel uncomfortable. Okay? That's one of Tony's biggest problems in life is, man, when I love people, I love them hard. And I love them like an old Saint Bernard. You know, like, oh, I just love you, love you, love you, love you, love you. And then I tell people how much you love them and let them know how much they loved. And unfortunately, without putting parameters and boundaries on people, they will run all over you. They will run all over you. So you got to step back, and every person, everything in your life is a system, and everything needs rules. Everything needs rules. And when you set those rules, you're going to be at peace. Now, I tie that in with God set rules. And once he set those rules as a foundation, that helps us be led by the Spirit. That helps us be led by the Spirit. Amen. So I hope that this was like a good analogy to help you understand the harmony of the law and the gospel. Prime example of this, and now I'll be done, is when Jesus was healing the man on the Sabbath. And people, the Pharisees run up to him. Jesus, how you healing that man on the Sabbath? Jesus, how you healing that man on the Sabbath? And Jesus said, don't you know I'm Lord of the Sabbath? That I gave the Sabbath to you in order to help you understand me? And now you come to me and try to quote the Sabbath against me? So, that's a prime example where Jesus followed the spirit of the law. Jesus knew the law. He didn't break the law, but he fulfilled it because he let people know, oh, this is the whole reason why we're doing this is love of our brother. So if you ain't going to help your brother on the Sabbath, you're going to let someone die on the Sabbath just because you've took this pledge to not do anything, then you missed the whole point. You missed the whole point. So don't be a binary disciple. Don't be a binary believer. Don't go and try to say you ain't underneath the law. Because if you're not underneath or if you don't know the law, then you really are grasping at straws when it comes to trying to be led by the Spirit of God. You're just doing what you think is right. And there's a way that seems right to a man, but the end thereof is destruction. Now on the flip side or on the same side, we have to go and understand, that what's the purpose of the law? We have systems in place, but what's the purpose? Like if I create a system or a new person comes into the Hill Ministry, and I create a system of rules for how me and that person are gonna interact. Why did I create that system for? I created that system so that we could both be at peace. So neither one of us would go and disrespect the other person. So you gotta have to understand the spirit behind why you even would create a system on how you deal with someone. You're not doing it to try to control anybody. You're trying to do it so that both parties can be at peace. And no one's gonna walk away offended. So don't lose sight with all your rules of the reason why you have the rules. Don't lose sight of, yes, everything's a system, but don't lose sight of the grand system. And the grand system is love your brother. That is the royal law. That is the royal law. Love your brother.